Previously on Anemone flower painting tutorial, we did a detailed painting of a flower head. Now we can move on and paint leaves. Welcome to part 2 of Anemone leaf painting. Let's start painting. We have 4 green watercolor mixes. In this anemone stem and leaves in the reference photo, I see a lot of green color tones, not just 1 or 2. The more greater variety you will have in this painting, in this composition, more lifelike and vivid it's going to look as in the result. Starting with applying water, very small amount, and with round synthetic brush, applying more darker green color, which is a mix of sap green, lemon yellow, and the most darker green color is Perylene Green, Sap Green, and lemon yellow. Lower part of the stem, if you take a look closer in the reference, you will notice it's more yellowish, and even later on I will add some Alizarin Crimson for darkening the very lowest inner part of the stem where leaves are covering from the light. Middle part of the stem I'm leaving very light. There is the main area where the light is hitting the surface, and that part should stay really light. In this painting it's very crucial to leave light areas much wider than even they appear in the reference. While we will be painting, we will making these areas of light smaller, but in the beginning those light areas should be much wider. With finer tip brush, adding more darker watercolor mix on the very upper part of the stem where the stem is meeting with flower head, adding shadow to the lower part of the stem with fine brush strokes and building that darkness saturation gradually. Don't rush here. Pay as much attention to the stem as you did or do for the flower head. It doesn't mean that the stem isn't so beautiful or so important. It is the part of this composition. Here I'm adding Alizarin Crimson for slightly darkening yellow mix for the base of the stem. So about the stem, it doesn't mean that it's not so beautiful as flower, but it's also the part of the composition and it's also important. If the stem will be rushed and painted poorly, it will be visible and viewer will notice that something is off, something isn't working with the painting, even if the flower is very beautifully painted. You should pay as much attention to the stem and leaves as you do for the flower. Moving forward, starting with leaves, and these leaves I will paint slightly different as I paint usually. I'm not applying water here. Those leaves are so small and they are like dancing all around this anemone flower, and I want to keep this. So in order to make it more realistic, more in movement, I'm more in control when I have my finer tip brush, and I will almost only be working with finer tip brush in order to make those fine brush strokes, fine transitions from darker to lighter, because one section of the leaf has multiple tonal values from darkness to light, again to dark. It's twisting, it's curving, so I want to catch that everything and show in my painting what I see in the reference. Here are no special technique or approach for painting these leaves. The most important part is to look in the reference and go slowly, like super slowly, in order to capture all what is shown in the reference. If we want that beautiful look, that movement of those leaves, we need to move forward slowly. Careful observation of the reference is a must. Constantly checking, constantly looking, adding different color tones, different tonal values, so that my leaves are moving as they are in the reference. Here's a side view how I'm painting, how my brush is touching the surface. Brush is almost dry with a small amount and transparent amount of watercolors. Painting with the tip of the brush, applying watercolors gradually and still constantly checking reference. I'm not just assuming that some area is dark, then I will paint all that area dark. No, in one dark area there are multiple more areas, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, and by showing that in this painting, we will make visually these leaves moving. I'm speeding up the process of painting this anemone flower leaves. Full tutorial is available on my Patreon. In part 1 I'm painting flower head, in part 2 I'm painting stem and leaves. All the explanation from start till finishing touches, nothing is skipping, all in real time. You can subscribe and try these tutorials, cancel anytime, and still have access for a whole month. While you're watching this video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you find it helpful, consider subscribing to my channel. New videos and tutorials coming out every week. Now painting lower part of the stem, and from the reference photo I see that the stem has slightly hairy texture on the surface, and I'm achieving that by little dry brush strokes and leaving little gaps in between my applying the watercolors, leaving little gaps, so in the end result it will look like there are little hairy texture on the stem surface. Adding a little bit more darkness to the upper part of the stem. That part of the stem is in the shadow, flower head is blocking light, and that part is darker. Now looking at the whole composition all together as one and seeing what is in the reference and what I'm missing still in my painting, adding a little bit darkness and contrast in the shadow area, and if needed you can also pay a little bit more attention to the flower head or to the leaves. Don't rush this stage. This is the most enjoying stage of painting process, when everything looks almost finished and you can clean up, make those edges more crisper, more finer. You are getting everything together, adding final touches. This is like the most best, at least for me, the best part in the painting process. Well, this is done. Now I will scan it, test print it. This painting will be made in high quality print and sent to my patrons around the world. I will leave a link to the full process of making art prints, high quality art prints. This process takes some time and asks quite a lot of attention, because when you scan it and first test print it, colors are not quite as they appear in your painting. And while the painting is with me, I can test print an example, place it just right beside the original and adjust colors if needed. There are watercolor pigments that are more easily transferred when are scanned, but there are some pigments that are quite hard to get right. For this anemone painting, it took me 6 test prints before it really matched the original. And when I get the right result, it's time to print them all out. It's done. I'm happy with the result. Hope you also learned something new from this tutorial and enjoyed the painting process of this anemone flower. Thank you and see you in my next tutorials. Bye bye!